This is Kevin from Survivor Super Fun Time Show, and obviously we had a good episode, this last episode of Survivor 49. Episode 6, it brought us a few important things. One of the biggest things obviously was the second swap of the season. Normally we only get one. Sometimes we have gotten two in the past, certainly not of the new era. This is the first one. And the first one I can remember of a swap where it was 4 people on each tribe. And that was pretty intense. But I think it was really good. It could have been a little bit of a disaster depending on who won the challenges, but I think thankfully it kind of shook out in a way that I liked it, which is great. But before we get into that, make sure you hit the subscribe button to the Survivor Super Fun Time Show. But getting into the finer points of the episode, you have the new Hina coming back and reeling from Tribal Council where they booted Jason. With the merge coming up soon, who needs a guy who's good at puzzles? Get rid of him. Not important. Get rid of that guy right away. And he seemed content with going home. I still don't understand why he didn't play his shot in the dark. It's incredibly perplexing to me. It pretty much escalated immediately into the swap, which happened at the reward challenge. Jeff hits him with a drop your buffs, we're switching again, and you have new shuffled tribes, which we saw in the previews. And these tribes were actually really interesting because I think there were 3 clear losers in this tribal swap right away. Right away, I looked at new Hina and I said, MC, you're screwed. I looked at new Uli. I said, Nate, dog, you're screwed. And then I looked at new Kella and you said, hypothetically, Steven, you're screwed, buddy. But as we find out later in the episode, not always the case. It's a pretty big deal going from 2 tribes to 3 again, which I don't even know why they bothered to do that. I think it actually kind of messed up the game. I understand you shuffling the Etch-a-Sketch, but this is shuffling that just gets too much. Fans were super happy with just 2 tribes, and obviously they filmed this ages ago. They didn't know fans would feel one way or another, but fans have been pretty vocal about it for a long time. So going from 3 to 2 and back to 3 again, I didn't like that move, but it did make things interesting. It's just whether or not it's fair and competitive, that's a different story. So before the first challenge starts, actually Christina of the Uli tribe has a little bit of a mini breakdown, a little bit of exhaustion. Just another reminder from probes and producers that this is a tough game. Not super easy. And Christina, who's not exerted herself as much as maybe some others in some of these challenges and stuff, she had her moment, and she got back up on the horse to her credit. And this is a challenge where everyone had to compete because everybody had 4 people. They had to do a lot of physical stuff and pull through. Uli was one of the winning tribes of this challenge, and so was Hina, no surprise. When I look at the breakdown of the new Hina tribe, it was Rizzo, it was Savannah, it was MC, and it was also Sophie from the former Kella tribe. So I was like, listen, this tribe's not going to lose anything. Savannah's in great shape. Sophie's been fine in challenges, even though she probably thinks that she's a black cloud. Rizzo's been good, and MC has been the #1 dominant player in the challenges so far at this point. So I'm like, dude, Hina's not losing. So I'm not worried about that at all. Rightfully so, they win the grilled cheese. They didn't have to sing and dance for it like some effing chicken and waffles from Probst. So good day for Uli and new Hina, which obviously means bad day for Kella. Rizzo does a really good toss at the end. He did great and had a really sweet moment where once he nailed throwing frisbees basically at little poles, he hugged his team members and said, thank you for having faith in me. And it was that moment was another reminder why someone like Rizzo is likely to come back for season 50. And that's because not only is he entertaining and he seems to be really talented and he's got a nose for idols, but he's got a great heart. That moment was one where I just said, Rizzo, man, that was genuine to turn around and say, thank you for having faith in me. That's a guy who believes in himself, but he's a guy who's overcome a lot of obstacles to believe in himself. He's just not just born with it. And it resonated with me, and I thought that was beautiful. And Kella, you have Shannon and Sage back together again. And this is a storyline that producers have been leaving in for the last couple of episodes. And I was like, there's no doubt there is going to be a conclusion to this at some point. So by the end of the episode, spoiler alert, Kella's going to go to Tribal Council, and there's going to be a conclusion where Shannon is sent home. But how we get there is kind of fun. And I'll talk about that later after the immunity challenge. I would certainly say the tribe that was most fun to watch after the swap happened is New Hina. You have 3 people that have been together pretty much for the last couple days. Savannah, Rizzo, and Sophie. They're locked in. They're a tight alliance. And then you have MC on the outs. MC's alone. First time been really separated from her original Hina peeps. And now she's trying to find some headway. And how'd she do that? She grabs Rizzo and takes him to the water hole and says, hey, I don't have many cards to play right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Rizzo I know he has the idol because Sage spilled the beans. So MC does that, and Rizzo, it's understandable coming from his perspective. He felt as though, yeah, it's kind of sucky that, everyone seems to know in the game now. But at the same time, if everyone knows, that also means everyone knows not to mess with me too. So it's kind of a 50-50 proposition, which is true. And what I love about that is it really sparks the three-person alliance to go out there and look for another advantage. Rizzo said his intuition, there's something out there, probably another idol. I'm like, no, there's no advantage or anything out there. MC has the one, she just needs to complete the beware advantage, and that's it. But believe it or not, there actually was an advantage that was planted in a tree near camp. She shoved that right down into her pants, and it was the knowledge is power advantage. And for those of you who are unaware, knowledge is power. What that means is, at a tribal council, you can basically stand up and say, hey, I want to take the advantage or the idol from somebody here that has one, and you have to name a person, and if they have one, they have to hand it over to you. And this has not been a very fruitful advantage in the past. It has failed very often, but this advantage is important because if anyone knows about it, then that's where idols start to change hands and calamities like Survivor 43 can occur. Even in seasons where knowledge is power isn't present, players still play as if it is present. So right now, Sophie has a lot of power in her hands. And what's actually super interesting about this is, despite Sophie, Savannah, and Rizzo seemingly having a really good alliance at this point, Sophie kept it all to herself. And she said, I'm not going to tell either of them about it because who knows, like they're with me now, but what if they're not with me in 2 days? And you know what, Sophie? She's brilliant. I know things didn't go her way early on in Kella, at least with winning challenges, but socially, on point. Strategically, on point. Sophie is poised to go really far in this game. Absolutely love the dynamic. I do have a feeling she's going to spill the beans, though. Like, if she doesn't tell Alex, I'd be a little bit surprised. Because Alex is the kind of guy who I think she would trust with the original Kella, and she would say, I'm working with Rizzo and Savannah. But then Alex is the kind of guy who would spill the beans about knowledge is power. So I'm a little worried for Sophie, but if she can actually keep it together and prove me wrong that she's really not going to tell anyone, then she's got a lot of power. On the very much less serious side of things, Rizzo had like one of those water segments, and you sit there as a Survivor fan who used to watch back in the day, the OG day, and you say, I wish in these hour-and-a-half new hour episodes that we saw more survival things, more things of them going out there and just doing boring, everyday things. Instead, it's usually always, game bot. And this was a nice, charming little segment where Rizzo basically said, I'm not capable of doing this, which I thought was kind of fun. Now, aside from New Hina, I actually think New Uli was a fascinating dynamic because you have Christina and you have Sophie, and then you also have Alex and Nate. So you have two original Hina, Akella, and an Uli. And the one who's really sticking out is Nate because Alex and the two Hina have been together for the last couple days. They agree they're going to be a voting block. But what's interesting about their dynamic is, although they agree that Nate is the one that has to go, well, who do we tell Nate is going to get voted out? And interestingly, Christina did not say Alex. I don't understand why them sitting on that beach wouldn't think that Alex is the more reasonable choice to throw out a name for than Sophie. Because Sophie, wouldn't you think, like if you're Nate, that Hina's going to stay strong? So obviously we have to go for Alex. But instead, Christina is super comfortable with telling Sophie to her face, yeah, you're the name that we're going to say. And this is like a Survivor unwritten rule. If you're the name that people are willing to throw out for a majority alliance to fool the person you're going to get rid of, that means that you are the one that's expendable to the majority alliance. And thankfully, Sophie with an E picked up on that shit right away. Sophie with an E knew back in old Hina days, back when Matt was around trying to make big alliances and stuff, Sophie was the person that was targeted. And she never let that shit go. Which is good because clearly Christina is making it known that that really hasn't changed all that much. If old Hina was together, Sophie's out of here. So Sophie expertly went to Alex and said, listen, we got to switch this up. I know you had your Sophie back at Kella, but I want to be your Hina Sophie. Come on, let's do this. And Alex, being the gamer he is, looks like he's receptive to it, which is great. But fortunately, they didn't have to deal with this episode, and they have the merge to sort it all out. But I love the gameplay from Sophie with an E. She's been really fun in the very limited amount of time we've actually gotten to see her on screen. I have great hope that she's going to be an awesome player this season. And you know what? Maybe she'll go out and she'll burn out like a star. Maybe. Only in a couple episodes. I don't know. But I appreciate that she's fighting, and I like it. All right, we get to the immunity challenge. Obviously, new Hina wins. And just like the reward challenge, Uli comes in second place, which means the destitute New Kella tribe, starring Shannon and Sage, are coming up the rear, and they are the ones who are going to Tribal Council. And their scramble afterward is really fascinating because you're thinking to yourself, you have three original Uli. Shannon, Sage, and Jawan. And then you have Steven from the old Hina tribe, a smart, nice guy. Why do we need him around, right? Merge is around the corner. Unfortunately, Shannon played herself. Shannon in this whole scramble. First of all, Sage hasn't forgotten that a couple days ago, Shannon was originally throwing out Sage's name as kind of a sacrifice to this new tribe where they were in the minority. She didn't forget about that. And then Shannon made the mistake of saying, we three Uli, we're all together. And then once Juwan walks and leaves, Shannon's like, listen, I don't need Juwan around here. I'd rather have Steven. So, Sage, we're going to get rid of Juwan. Steven, we're getting rid of Juwan. No problem. And that's where Sage was given the ammo that she needed to turn on Shannon. She goes right to Juwan and says, yes, by the way, she's lying. She wants to get rid of you. Get rid of you. And Juwan's like pretty gullible, even though she was telling the truth. He's pretty gullible, so he's going to go with that plan anyway. And Steven has to be convinced essentially that it's good to go with us two versus her, Shannon. And I think it doesn't take a lot of convincing to tell Steven, like, hey, vote this way and you live. And obviously he's going to go with that, right? So Sage's plan to vote out Shannon, somebody that I knew her doom was coming for a good bit. In preseason, I said she was never going to make it out of the pre-merge. I actually thought she'd be the first boot. I was wrong about that because she never actually was on a tribe that lost an immunity challenge. But the first time her tribe did lose a challenge, she was the first one voted out. So I was kind of right, but she blew it. This was probably the biggest moment of the episode. As Shannon was leaving, giving everyone hugs, taking her vote out on the chin, she gets to Sage, and Sage says, I'm going to give you a handshake. I don't want to give you a hug because it would not be authentic, and the next time I hug you, I want it to be authentic. Now, I'm paraphrasing as I say that, but that's basically what happened. And some people say, man, mean Survivor's back. That wasn't mean. That was actually really respectful on Sage's part. I mean, one, it's an exercise of consent, so there you go. And number two, it could have been way worse. They could have said, go sit over there, your seat's over there, like Tyson did in Blood versus Water. You could have said, get the fudge out of here and give him the finger. It could have been anything. But Sage was pretty respectful about it while also making it clear, I'm not in the space to connect with you in this way, even though you love connecting and all this goofy stuff. I mean, I still can't get over the fact that she said she remembers being in the womb. Shannon saying she remembers being in the womb is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. It's right up there with, I used to collect blackheads and put them in a jar. So they're both weirdos in different ways. And I think Shannon's doom, however, was the more foreseeable one. Shannon leaving right before the merge is probably better for everyone. She was a smart player. She was a very manipulative player, even if she said it was just part of her personality strategy of being nice. Still, girl gots to go. Because the remaining players, as we head into the merge next week, they got rid of someone who strategically is a bigger threat than Juwan or Sage, and possibly even Steven. But of course, the biggest issue now for former Uli, if they want to stick together, you now just lost a soldier in that war. So now it's going to be 5-4 with 2 Kella in the middle. So the question is, for this old Uli, have you properly scooped up Sophie? If you can keep old Kella Sophie on your side and Sophie can bring in Alex, then it's going to be dominant. That's great. But at any point, the old Kella can go with old Hina and they would have the majority over old Uli. So they have opened themselves up to that wound potentially. The only thing is, I feel pretty confident that Sophie is not going to flip on Savannah and Rizzo. So I think old Uli is going to be okay for a little bit. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode of The Merge. It looks like it's going to kick off pretty strong. I can't wait to see 2 big tribes battling each other with the minority tribe, the disaster tribe, in the middle. I loved it when I watched Tika do it in Survivor 44. I loved it when I watched Lulu do it in Survivor 45. Now, it didn't work out so much in 45, but it worked out great in 44. Plus, I love the merge buffs. I've already seen what they look like, and they look really incredible. And we see Savannah basically get tackled by who I think is MC, maybe taking her out. Like, we can already see just the hardcore wrestle each other down to the ground type of gameplay from a little Spitfire lady like Savannah, and I can't wait to see that live with my eyeballs. Oh, also on an interesting note, 5 black players made it to the merge. You got MC, you got Christina, you got Nate, Alex, and MC. 5. Now, I don't know exactly all about black excellence, as I am the palest person since Casper the Friendly Ghost. But this looks like it to me. So congratulations. This is kind of a landmark moment. But for the episode itself, I thought it was a good episode. I thought Sage had a really good time kind of breaking out a little bit. She's becoming a Carolyn Weiger, a Norris Salmon, although I think some people like her a little bit more. But to be fair, she's kind of juxtaposed against Shannon, who some people probably didn't dig all the Christian and Jesus talk stuff. And I didn't personally. That's not my life. So yeah. And Sage seems really fun, and she's smarter than she lets on, of course. Still, I don't think it's her game or anything, but it was a good episode for her. It was a good episode for MC to try to break things out a little bit while being trapped. Still a beast. Rizzo and Savannah keeps rolling on. Sophie with the secret advantage. I love what's going on here, and it's definitely going to lead up to a good post-merge game. And I can't wait. Let's see if it'll be up there with some of the best ones of the new era. One of my favorite pieces of commentary that came from this episode is so many people on Twitter and Reddit, this idea that Castaways called Jeff Probst Uncle Jeff. And that's this silly thing where castaways in the game, they're dying. They're begging for Jeff's approval. While being out there, they love the idea of getting Uncle Jeffrey to look at him and give him a little bit of a smile. And you know what? It's not their fault. You know, Survivor castaways now have been institutionalized into feeling this way. Because before there was a little bit, I think, of back and forth, and I think Jeff does like the spiciness kind of naturally in his relationship with players. But so much of it is definitely gone. I don't think he's interested in too much conflict with players. I think he expects everyone to conform to the system, which is kind of roll with me and my goofiness, because I'm going to be silly Uncle Jeff, and I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to pull out Twizzlers and popcorn while I'm at Tribal Council so that I can make a meme out of myself. I'm going to do gargoyle poses like this, and maybe I'm going to let Rome sit in my Tribal Council chair. And that's because I want to create moments where I'm the focal point of things, which is unfortunate because Jeffrey Probst, back in the day, he did not need to do that. This is clearly something where he, as a producer, is a big fan of getting the castaways to idolize him in a way. And that's unfortunate because I love Jeff. I bet, well, at least back in the day, I definitely loved Jeff. Now there's some things where I wish he did things a little differently so I could love him more. And he's still the heartbeat of Survivor, no question. But the Uncle Jeff stuff is where I'm going like, ugh. They're leaving that stuff in because they want players to keep doing it. They want to reinforce the behavior over and over again. And it's unfortunate because what I wouldn't give to have Coach give him the finger, which he could in Survivor 50. That's very possible. Because say what you want about Coach, but Coach is someone who's not going to conform to the Uncle Jeff stuff. No chance. And it's not the worst thing in the world, whatever. It's just a little cringe. But a lot of New Era stuff is pretty cringe too, so... But what did you think of the episode? Did you like what happened here? Let me know down below in the comments section. I would love to chat with you. Also, really fun in the Super Fun channel this upcoming week. To recap this episode and look ahead to the next one for the merge, we have Survivor 44 and 45's Bruce Peralt, who's going to be doing a live interview with Survivor Super Fun Time Show. It's going to be really fun. Let me know if you have any comments for Bruce down below, and I would be glad to pass them along. Otherwise, hope you have an amazing day, everyone. You take care. Goodbye.